The President of the United States enjoys the power of the pardon. He is constitutionally granted the ability to forgive crimes against the nation without oversight. Since his second term began on January 20th, President Trump has pardoned over 1,600 people, including, but not limited to, those involved in the January 6th insurrection, reality TV fraudsters, and anti-abortion activists. Today, we look at Trump's second-term pardon spree and ask, are Trump's pardons based on ideology, quid pro quo, or are they an outlet for his disdain for the justice system? Welcome to the Politics of New America. On today's show, we look at Trump's second-term pardons and discuss the history behind the president's ability to grant clemency. I'm your host, Nathan Stone, and with me is show producer Josh Carmody.
When's that Diddy pardon coming down the tank? Let's see when that's coming out. Yeah, he both said he will do it and he'll consider it. He's given us both versions.
Well, you have to keep us on our toes, right? If he just said one way or the other, we wouldn't have as much to talk about. And if there's one thing that I think the president likes, is it when people talk about him. If I had to guess. But yeah, Josh, we've gotten into a weird place with pardons, especially in Trump 2, the second term, the sequel. His first term was honestly pretty normal amongst presidents for
Did he have a lot of pardons in the first term?
No.
I feel like I didn't hear about pardons a lot until now.
Yeah, he had
I knew of pardons, but
he had 143. Which sounds like a lot, but actually puts him third lowest out of U.S. presidents who have pardoned. And his second term now, barely in its infancy still, right, has put him at third all-time highest.
There we go. That's the Trump I know.
Yeah. So he's over 1,600 at this point. He's chasing the second place Harry S. Truman, who was at 1913. And well above both of them is FDR, because FDR did 3 terms. It's so hard to catch FDR in presidential records.
Yeah, FDR I get. Who was Truman pardoning? What was he up to? What was that? When was Truman? The 50s?
45 to 53.
So 45 to 53. So he had to pardon all those early Cold War guys.
Maybe some scientists.
Yeah. Sling around. So hey, you're in Operation Paperclip. It's fine. Oh, we'll slip you one.
So today we do policy mostly on this show, and we look at how the administration's policy affects Americans in the world. I wanted to do pardons because they're policy, but they're not necessarily policy. It gives us a look into how the president does business. And a lot of things do, but pardons tend to be a little bit more personal to the president. So, for example, President Obama in office, not a ton of pardons, but he granted a lot of, he commuted a lot of sentences. And what that is basically lowers, it doesn't get you off the hook like a pardon, but the president can also lower your sentence. He can commute it to time served. He can do a lot of things that aren't just pardons. And President Obama used that commutation power more than any other president. So each president kind of looks at pardons in their own way. And it's important because the way that a president uses their pardons, I think, sets a precedent as well as kind of shows America and the world how they approach criminal justice. And criminal justice is always a huge issue in the United States. So today we're gonna talk a little bit about the pardons of Trump too. We're not really interested in his first term. Because some of these
are way beyond that.
Yeah, some of these are a little bit out there and a little bit wild. But before we jump into that with both feet, let's just talk about pardons a little bit, because a lot of people think, oh, okay, pardon, it's Monopoly. It's a get out of jail free card. And it is to an extent. To an extent.
Yeah.
It's also a little bit more powerful than that even. So a presidential pardon, it's a official expression of forgiveness from the United States government that removes civil penalties, restrictions on the right to vote. So very famously, if you are a felon in the United States, you cannot vote. But if you are pardoned, you regain that right.
That I did not know.
Yeah. The ability to hold elected office. Again, generally speaking, if you are a criminal, makes it very hard for you to hold elected office. We've seen, of course, that's not always the case.
But if you run for president and, like a few people vote for you, then you're fine.
Yeah,
it's fine.
It's fine. Sit on a jury. And it also tends to remove the stigma around a conviction. If you were pardoned by the president, chances are people are just going to be like, oh, okay. Clearly, it was a mistake that they ever threw you in jail in the first place. And as we'll see, of course, that's, again, not always the case. So where did this come from? Well, it came from the Constitution, that infallible document that it states that the president has the authority to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. So if you've listened to our impeachment episode, you'll know that impeachment, very serious, also very hard. Not a lot of people get impeached successfully and get convicted and get kicked out of office.
Yeah, where's my, I'm supposed to be a senator or congressman from a certain state.
Oh, yeah, the great state of Delaware. Yeah.
My Delaware congressman has had no luck in passing anything regarding impeachment or some other planned promises so far.
Yeah, and that's not even your fault. I mean, you've been trying your best, but it's just very difficult.
Hey, however, in Delaware, we don't give up.
Yeah. However, that is the one thing the president cannot touch with his power of the pardon is impeachment, because that basically goes above him or laterally to him because Congress did it, and so the president can't undo it. Now, one of the most important things to know about reprieves and pardons coming from the president is that the United States Supreme Court has ruled on this power, and they describe it as plenary, which is just a very fancy way of saying that it is considered broad and generally not subject to congressional modification. What does this mean? It means that Congress and the House and the Senate can hate it. They can hate it all they want. They can't do a thing about it.
And this is specifically the definition of plenary. This word I've never heard before.
So plenary, it's a good way of saying kind of broad and all encompassing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, is what plenary means. But it's important to know that it goes above the normal checks and balances of American government. So this was actually tried in 1866. In a court case, and so they ruled, the court ruled that legislation could not restrict the president's pardon power. So even if you as a congressman put a piece of legislation forward saying that president too powerful, we gotta cut this back, we're gonna put these limits on the pardon, wouldn't pass. The court would strike it down. So the origins of the pardon. The American pardon, I should say. A lot of countries have a presidential pardon of some degree or others. Others rely on institutions to pardon. So up here in Canada, the Prime Minister can't pardon. It's actually our judicial system that handles pardons, like they handle the rest of our judicial matters. And usually it's republics. So if you see if your head of state is a president, it's a pretty good chance they have a presidential pardon. But this all started in England, and America in its infancy borrowed a lot from England, and they just kind of tweaked it so that it wasn't quite English anymore because they wanted to do their own thing. So
What if we do this but no king?
yeah, exactly.
But what if we king a little bit?
So that the head of state in Britain, so the king or queen, did have a power kind of known. It was known previously as the prerogative of mercy. Which is a very fancy way of saying pardon. So after the United States won its independence, during the Constitutional Convention, our good buddy Alexander Hamilton comes up a lot on this show because he did not shut up about government. He had so many ideas about government, and
well, thank God someone shot him and stopped him from ever doing that again.
So there was a debate about whether Congress should have a role in the pardon power, and with the Senate approving presidential pardons. They also debated whether treason should be excluded from those pardonable offenses. Hamilton introduces the concept of the pardon power, and then everybody argues about it for a while.
What did John Adams think about it? I feel like we don't talk about John Adams enough on this show. What did John Adams have to say?
You know what? I'll have to ask him. I have no idea. John Adams just isn't as interesting. Hamilton had a bit more snarl.
You know what? I should have went for someone who ran for president but didn't get elected.
Yeah.
Ben Franklin.
Oh, there we go.
Now there's an interesting character.
So it went kind of back and forth. However, the final result was this expansive power for the president that exists in Article 2. And it's actually the strongest example of constitutional unilateralism for the executive that kind of exists in the American system. Basically, it's the one power where they were like, just let him do it. Just give it to him. Yeah. So
yeah, he's 6'4". He's got red hair and weird wooden teeth. I don't know.
Yeah.
We should just let it go.
Yeah, and in one of these beautiful cases of history coming back to bite us all in the butt, the delegates reasoned that they weren't going to have a clause for denying pardons based on treason because they thought that pardoning subordinates for treason would subject the president to threats of impeachment and ultimately removal from office. And as we can see, clearly that is the case. Clearly, there's been...
Spoiler alert, go listen to our impeachment episode
Yeah.
about how many presidents have actually been impeached and removed from office.
Yeah. And honestly, just the idea that they thought it was so incredibly unlikely that the president would pardon anyone for treason or maybe insurrection, that they just kind of laughed it off and said, it's okay. We don't have to put a clause in there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, was it like most of the founding fathers like in their 20s? Like,
They were
pretty young.
They were fairly young. Yeah.
like
it was a mix,
30s, like it's
no one lived
kind of
that long.
idealistic like age for people. Like I kind of get where they're coming from with a lot of this stuff, but at the same time, it just doesn't hold up.
Yeah, a lot of what the founders envisioned just has grown so much and evolved so much that their version of America is totally non-representative of what America is today in terms of population, demographics, the way that countries work together and get into conflicts. These were things that they could never have foreseen.
And I mean, this is why we have the amendments to the Constitution, which I assume did not all happen at once and were spread out over many years.
Yeah.
But do you know off the top of your head when the last amendment was to the Constitution?
Oh, dear Lord.
Was it would have been during the civil rights?
So that would have been
I'll give you the opportunity to look it up if we want to edit this part out.
So the last amendment, the 27th Amendment, went through in 1992.
Okay.
And before that, the 26th, 1971, and they kind of go back throughout American history.
Yeah.
So we're not looking at that long of a time frame where the Constitution has been this untouchable beacon of light, right?
Not at all. God, I was alive for Christ's
Exactly.
sake. Like, honestly, we're due.
we are absolutely due.
Yeah.
Yeah, the amendment system is there because when they were doing this, no one liked it. They finished the Constitution. They were like, oh, this is what we got, huh? And so they decided there needed to be a framework to work to improve it. Remember the First Amendment, the first one, is the big freedom of speech amendment. Kind of slipped through the Constitution's cracks, and they're like, "Oh boy, we better make sure that people aren't getting arrested for just."
I didn't realize
saying
that was like an actual amendment. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that is. Yeah, it's like, oof, drop the ball. Someone was sweating about that one.
Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, press, assembly, petition. That's First Amendment. That's not in the original document, guys.
Yeah.
It was an incomplete document, and they knew that. And
Yeah.
so it's not. It should never ever be taken seriously if someone tries to tell you that the Constitution is in some way this perfect, unalterable document. All it's known is revisions throughout its history up until 1992, and then after that, it just everything ran out of steam. I mean, part of that too was the 90s, leading into the 80s, into the 90s, into the 2000s is when we've seen this hyper-partisanship really developed into the absolute mess that we have now. And
Well,
so,
as you said, we had Republican President Reagan,
Yeah.
and then we had Republican President Clinton.
there's been a lot of Republican
really,
presidents, yeah.
really threw a wrench into things.
Yeah, so this has been a bit of a digression, but yeah, if please never ever think of the Constitution as in any way perfect. It needs work. It continues to need work, and hopefully at some point they can get back to working on it. Yeah. But yeah, so we kind of covered, first thing, presidential pardons through the years. Mm-hmm. Every president has used them, just like every president since national emergencies became a thing has used national emergencies. Presidents tend to like to use the powers that are given to them.
Yeah.
And everyone's kind of in a different spot for pardons. Most of them are in the hundreds. There's, the top 5 or so crack 1,000. And near the bottom, actually, is Joe Biden. Only did 80 in his 4 years, which is the second lowest. George H.W. was our absolute lowest from 89 to 93, only 74. So, he was talking about a kinder, gentler America. He did not mean in terms of clemency, unfortunately.
I don't know. Who was there to pardon? Who did he have? You think about Joe Biden being like a kind of holding the fort down president. Like, well, no, George H.W. Bush, that's a holding the fort down president.
You're not wrong.
Let's take a look at those 4 years.
So now let's talk Trump. We've gone long enough talking about history. We have to unfortunately come to the present. So Trump is the very first president in American history to appoint a pardon chief or pardon czar, as she is known.
He loves calling people czars.
Yeah, that's been a thing that's hung out in Washington for many years, but he seems to really like it. And it's just a very strange term that was at some point adopted. Because if you think, like, why would you name this after Russian royalty from, like, circa 1900s?
Well, Trump just loves stuff that, he loves stuff that someone just told him a moment ago. Like, we have the whole groceries thing. Where it's like, groceries, it's an old term. It's an old word that people did. Groceries, have you heard of groceries? Like that, I'm pretty close to the actual quote. I feel like he just likes a word that rolls off the tongue, and I feel like he likes the way czar sounds. I feel like it's just fun to him. He likes how it rumbles his tongue.
You know what? That is as good an explanation as I've ever heard.
Basically it.
Yeah, we'll go with it. So let's talk about Alice Johnson. So she's actually a really interesting kind of character. And the type of person that every now and then in the Trump administration, you see people and you're like, how did you get here? And she's kind of one of them. But she was arrested all the way back in 93 and then convicted in 96 of 8 federal criminal counts. And these were crimes related to her involvement in a Memphis, Tennessee-based cocaine trafficking organization.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Not what I expected.
Yeah, so she was also convicted on some money laundering and other charges. But
I mean, sure, I figured those would have been the first ones you said, but you're like, cocaine. I was like, whoa, all right, let's go. Let's party with Alice.
so this was quite a large organization or organized crime ring. The operation she was involved in Memphis had over a dozen individuals, and the indictment described her as a leader in a multi-million-dollar cocaine ring. And it went in and detailed kind of dozens of different drug transactions, deliveries, routes that she would run. It was connected to Colombian drug dealers based out of Texas. Mm-hmm. Now, she was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. The U.S. District Judge that convicted her did, however, describe her as the quintessential entrepreneur, which is kind of a nice thing to say to someone who you've just given a life sentence to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. No. Yeah. If you want to deal with diplomatic relations, you need to talk to my buddy Ollie North here.
She was kind of a major player in this drug organization. She went to prison and actually became a model prisoner. She did some time at a federal medical center. I think probably because she must have had some health issues. Mm-hmm. But she at this federal medical center, she became a certified hospice worker. And then she was subsequently transferred to another facility to be closer to family, and eventually became part of this pilot program for female federal prisoners that allowed kind of FaceTime. They brought FaceTime into prison so that they could kind of talk to their families and spend that kind of thing.
You mean like actual FaceTime, or do you mean?
Oh, no, so I mean virtual, Zoom, like a virtual kind of thing.
A virtual thing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And eventually she became an ordained minister. So in prison, definitely seemed to improve herself. Mm-hmm. And finally, a campaign in support of her early release, or just release in general, I guess, because she was serving a life sentence, was launched by the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. And there various activists as well who supported her argued that her punishment was excessive and an example of disproportionate impacts on African Americans. So originally, they petitioned the Obama administration for for clemency, because as we've said, Obama was not so much high on pardons, but definitely commuting sentences, right? And she had already served quite a few years, so the thought was like maybe she could get time served, right? And it wouldn't erase her conviction, but it would let her out. It seemed like that might go through, but her application got denied just before Obama's term ended. So this is where things get kind of weird and Trumpian. So in 2018, Kim Kardashian, alongside Jared Kushner, who is actually, I guess, President Donald Trump's son-in-law.
I think it's Kushner.
Oh, it's Kushner. Sorry,
it's Kushner. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, he is. He's with Ivana Trump.
So Jared Kushner, being his son-in-law. Him and Kim Kardashian.
Ivanka is the daughter.
Okay.
So it's Ivanka Trump. Sorry.
Yeah. Jared Kushner and Kim Kardashian meet the president in the Oval Office. This is during Trump's first presidency in 2018. And they both urged him to pardon Johnson. Following that, Trump commuted Johnson's sentence, and Johnson was released. And So that was kind of he did a little bit of a spree at the same time, where he said it was a few high profile cases brought to him by associates and allies. But what's interesting is Kardashian's then husband Kanye West, who was a noted supporter of Trump, she kind of attributed that as being partially responsible for Johnson's release. So, wild
self-proclaimed Nazi Kanye West.
So, since her release, Johnson has become an advocate for criminal justice reform, and kind of evokes her personal experience, speaks on that, and the month after release, she started campaigning for the end of mandatory sentencing.
Yeah.
Now, when Trump came in this time around, he appointed Johnson in February 2025, so kind of just after getting in, for a role as his pardon czar, where she would recommend other prisoners for clemency. And she has since become the very first person to ever hold this position because he made it up.
Yeah.
And so that in itself is kind of a wild idea of having someone on staff who just recommends people for you to pardon and let out of jail.
It is like it's funny, like bare bones. It's not offensive. I think this person, I mean, I've heard only very little information about her, but it's like someone who potentially went through the justice system, reformed, tried to reform, helped other people reform, gets pardoned, gets out, gets this big position, and is like, no, there's others in there that we can help and lift up. Doesn't sound terrible.
Exactly. This is actually, I think, a really strong idea. For all of the reasons you just listed, this is someone who knows the criminal justice system, who has been through the criminal justice system, come out on the other side, clearly in a better position than they went in, which is very rare.
Well, they're not a coke dealer anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so this kind of thing would lead you to believe that the second Trump presidency could be very good for some people who were wrongly convicted or rightfully convicted but overly punished. Right? There's all sorts of injustices
I mean, at
within
the end
the
of the
system.
day, at least like good for ex-coke dealers, like
yeah.
which I'm sure Trump knows a bunch of.
Yeah. So what you might expect then is we're gonna hit on some of Trump's pardons, and what you might expect then is these are gonna be well thought out. They're gonna be people who the system has really taken it to unjustly, and maybe people who have fallen through the cracks and really deserve a second chance. Or I'm belaboring this. It's not any of those things.
Producer Hannah here. Currently, the space is not in use. If you would like to hear your ad here at the beginning or at the end of the show, you can contact us at hauntedmouseproductions@gmail.com. Back to the show.
All right, let's have a look at some of Trump's recent pardons, but starting with the big one, which is the pardoning of the January 6th insurrection and its organizers, because this is the meat of Trump's pardons. This is where he pumped up those numbers to get himself into third place all time. And so this was done not on an individual scale. This was actually done as a proclamation. So a proclamation is similar to an executive order in that the president kind of writes it down officially, and if it's as long as it's a thing within his power, he makes it official. So this proclamation kind of starts off well with ends a grave national injustice that has been perpetrated upon the American people over the last 4 years and begins a process of national reconciliation. So that's really nice. What it actually does is it names 14 people as getting their sentences commuted. Then it grants a full and complete and unconditional pardon to all other individuals convicted of offenses related to the events that occurred at or near the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021. And the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, is put in charge of administering all of these pardons. So that was the big one. And it was done as a proclamation for the same reason. Well, firstly, it saves a little bit of time, but also this was a big win for Trump's base, right? So a lot of his executive orders, as we've covered, are done as kind of PR stunts. This was a very large PR stunt, right? This was the victory lap of of finally kind of putting to bed the whole January 6th issue, because he escaped impeachment, he escaped any sort of criminal prosecution, and now he is basically undone all of the Justice Department's work in putting away the insurrectionists. So this one proclamation was kind of a big middle finger to both, I think, the Democrats, but also the Department of Justice in a lot of ways, and specifically
the
the courts,
people,
I should say,
who are upset about money being spent. And it's like, guess how much money got spent prosecuting these people for 4 years? Like,
quite a bit.
Hell.
Yeah. So that was that one, and we've known about that one for a while. That was kind of one of his first day actions. But let's skip ahead to May. And kind of we've seen a whole bunch of action, but I want to kind of drill down on a couple of them. Trump used his pardon to on former New York Representative Michael Grimm. Now, if you're dialed into politics, you might remember him. He served in Congress from 2011 to 2015, and he's a Republican. His political career, though, kind of hit the rocks when he pleaded guilty to aiding and assisting the preparation of false tax returns and concealing more than $900,000 in gross income. And $900,000 in Washington money isn't a lot, but your average congressperson makes nowhere near that. That's a lot of money. Now, for doing all of those mean, nasty things, he spent a grand total of 7 months in prison, and then attempted a political comeback in 2018, where he lost in the Republican primary for his New York City district. So he got a pardon, which is nice. So any other restrictions on him are now lifted. He gets that clean slate. There's also a former Connecticut governor, John Rowland. He was brought down in a corruption scandal. Now, Rowland, he was the governor of Connecticut from 1995 to 2004, so a long time, almost a full decade. And he was convicted in 2 separate federal criminal cases, and eventually ended up sentenced to a 30-month prison term in 2015. Basically, his is a little bit more complex, but in October 2009, he devised a scheme to work for the campaign of a candidate seeking election to the U.S. House of Representatives from Connecticut's 5th Congressional District. And he took steps to conceal the fact that he was doing this extra work for that candidate from the Election Commission. And he was going to be paid for that. But not only did he do that and just kind of not report it, he took steps to make that illegal arrangement appear legitimate by drafting a sham consulting contract.
As you do.
Yeah, where he would be paid to work for a separate corporate entity owned by that candidate. So it's just a lot of shady stuff, really. And like a lawyer could explain this better than I can, but it's a lot of shady stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So this is the kind of thing where in previous administrations, pardoning party members who have already had their names and reputations ruined, have been convicted. You know, those would have been the kind of people that you put in quarantine, right, from the party, and you're just like, oh, we disavow these people. You know, they're bad apples, right?
Yeah,
bad apples. What are you going to do? You know, it's just what it is. But to see it nowadays, where Trump's just like, yeah, pardon those guys, they're good guys. You know, they're fine. Kind of again speaks to that nature where he doesn't feel that he has to care beyond his base. Mm-hmm. So, you know,
beyond
good
himself, really.
Yeah, good.
I mean,
you know,
why are we pardoning Diddy? Why are we potentially even floating the idea of pardoning Diddy?
Well, this is the thing. Trump isn't afraid to pardon just people he likes.
Yeah.
Or people that, you know, are, as we'll see in a minute, people that are related to people that he likes, kind of thing.
And I hope I'm not blowing the lead here or whatever, but like some of the people that got pardoned on January 6th are either rearrested or dead because they got shot by the police.
Yeah, they've got some other troubles, a lot of those folks. Clearly, you know, it wasn't the attacking the Capitol may not have been a one-off thing for a lot of these guys, I guess. But
I don't know. Yeah, showing up to the Capitol and busted in the windows while wearing a shirt that says Camp Auschwitz. I don't know. Yeah, maybe not the best person on the, you know, that you want to side up with.
Yeah. So those two pardons were on May 28th. Also on May 28th, Trump issued a pardon to a former Virginia sheriff who was convicted on fraud and bribery charges. So this is Sheriff Scott Jenkins. What he did was he accepted more than $75,000 in bribes in exchange for making several businessmen into law enforcement officers without them having been trained. So Jenkins, a longtime Trump supporter, was sentenced in March to 10 years in prison. He was set to report to jail kind of the following Tuesday. And but due to his pardon, he will never see the inside of a cell. Yeah. And so Trump actually spoke about them personally on Truth Social, coming out and saying that Sheriff Scott Jenkins and his wife Patricia and their family have been dragged through hell in all caps. And he said that Jenkins was the victim of an overzealous Biden Department of Justice. It was a jury trial, but be that as it may. He also said that Jenkins is a wonderful person who was persecuted by radical left monsters. Prosecutors, on the other hand, said that he accepted bribes from 8 people, including 2 undercover FBI agents. So they had a pretty tight case. I really don't know that the radical leftists snuck in there and pulled one over on the Justice Department.
Those radical leftist FBI agents, as they're known.
Yeah. I mean, an agency long known for its left-leaning thoughts and actions. Yeah. Alongside that, there was convicted fraudster Kevin Eric Baisden, Mark Bayshaw, who was an Army officer. He was convicted, court-martialed for violating COVID protection rules. And honestly, out of all of his May 28th pardons, the only one that I can really get behind is a couple of guys named Tanner Menzel and John Moore. They were convicted of theft at sea. And what they did was they released sharks. They broke them out of these holding shark containment things.
Go on.
Because they thought they were being illegally fished. Mm-hmm. As it happened, the sharks were being legally caught by scientific researchers who were just going to research them and not harm them at all. And honestly, I might give those guys a bit of slap on the wrist too. Be like, you were stupid, but your heart was in the right place, guys. So what? I have no problem
I'm
with that
all
one.
for them getting pardoned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm into it.
as a television lover, Josh, this is one you might have heard of, and it made all the news. Todd and Julie Chrisley.
I did hear about
Yes.
this. Yes. I the funny thing is, I feel like I kind of didn't really know who they were until they got pardoned. I think I had, in passing heard about what they had done, and it was really them getting pardoned where I was like, wait, what? Whoa.
So they were reality TV show stars on the show Chrisley Knows Best. Now,
Which I'd never heard
I
of
had
before
never
in my
heard
life.
of this either.
And I mean, there's so many of them. There's Hogan's Knows Best. Stallone has his own reality show where it follows him and his family around.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Also, what is it? Alec Baldwin has a show that follows him and his family around, where you find out that he clearly has a better understanding of the Spanish language than his wife, who claims she's from Spain. So, I don't know. The reality TV is crazy. Hey, we have another podcast called Boob Tube on Haunted Mouse Productions. You might want to check that out. Shameless self-plug.
That show, the Chrisley Knows Best, revolved around Todd Chrisley, who is a real estate tycoon, and his wealthy family doing real estate tycoon stuff, I guess. And there was also a spin-off focusing on Chase and Savannah Chrisley. So Savannah is their daughter, and we'll talk about her more in a little bit. That premiered in 2019. So the Chrisleys were found guilty in 2022. So they've actually gone to jail and have had to do a tiny amount of their sentence. What they were convicted of was conspiracy to defraud banks out of more than $30 million. So it turns out that the real estate tycoon thing was a little bit overblown, and they might have been hemorrhaging a little bit of money. They attempted to defraud the banks, and they were also found guilty of several tax crimes, including attempting to defraud the IRS. Now, their daughter, Savannah, hadn't been linked to any of these crimes. However, she is a right-wing influencer with over 3 million followers. And so she has been kind of beating the drum and leading this charge to get her folks pardons. And so she actually spoke at, I believe, the RNC in Milwaukee, in last July. So she's done a lot of campaigning for Trump and for the Republican Party. She was part of the Team Trump's Women Tour, which is not something I had heard of, but
I mean, I feel like it's come across my desk, but at the same time, not something I'm gonna reread the title of.
So her lobbying seems to have won over Trump. He actually called her and her brother from the Oval Office to personally inform them that he would be pardoning their parents. And he said their sentences were far too harsh. Todd had been serving a 12-year sentence and Julie a 7-year sentence. This one is kind of wild because of all of Trump's pardons, it feels like the most kind of quid pro quo in terms of, oh, hey, here's this influencer. She has over 3 million. She's 3 million followers. She's young. She's hip with the kids. She's campaigned for you, and it just so happens her parents have been convicted for major tax fraud.
Yeah. On her way to a Young Republicans meeting, she was struck by lightning and given superpowers.
So, again, it really goes to show, and I know I've talked about this before, this era of Republican dominance and just I don't even want to call it audacity, but it's really a boldness about this administration and what they do, and clearly the people and interests that it serves. So I think the last big one that we'll look at today is one back from January 23rd. So only the third day of the Trump presidency, but it's an important one too, because I think it was about 15 or so people. Trump pardoned anti-abortion activists convicted of blockading abortion clinic entrances. Sorry, it was 23 people. And this was in Michigan. And he called it a great honor to sign this pardon, saying that they should not have been prosecuted and, that they were peaceful pro-life protesters. The prosecution saw things a little bit differently, saying that they forcefully and physically blocked patients from trying to access their doctors. Some of the offenses that they were convicted of include breaking into clinics, stealing fetal tissue, and accosting pregnant patients. This one is
normal protesting stuff.
Yeah, normal. Yeah. This one is kind of more on that ideological bent, and I'm sorry. There was two different clinics involved. There was a Washington clinic and a Michigan clinic. Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that I found utterly bizarre. So one of the leaders of this group, Lauren Handy, she was sentenced to approximately 5 years for leading the blockade of the Washington clinic and directing blockaders to link themselves together with locks of chain to block the clinic's doors. A nurse kind of got hurt in an altercation with these folks. Mm-hmm. And so was a woman who was having labor pains. But the most bizarre thing about Lauren Handy is when she was apprehended after this, she had stolen fetal tissue. Specifically, police found 5 fetuses in Handy's home after she was indicted. And I'm not even going to speculate on the purpose behind doing this. However, again, this is a woman who has received a free and clear pardon. So it's some of the stuff here is just wild, and which is kind of why I wanted to talk about it on the show, because these are people that wouldn't necessarily be getting pardons under, I think, any other administration, Republican or Democrat.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
But here they seem to be, and what's wild about it is we've said Trump has a pardon czar who seems to be eminently qualified. And I wonder if it's kind of like being Trump's speechwriter, as we've discussed, right? Where you have this job, but is he looking at the notes, or is he just like going on Fox and like scribbling in some names of people he gets worked up about? I'm not sure. Because they are so all over the place. Mm-hmm. So to wrap this up, when we started this episode, I kind of asked, right, is this based on ideology, quid pro quo, or are they an outlet for his disdain of the justice system? Well, some of the names we didn't get into today, of some of the pardons, a lot of them are for things like bribery, things like fraud and corruption. Mm-hmm. And I kind of think that the answer is sort of yes to each of these. We're seeing kind of on the ideological side with the abortion protesters. We're seeing the quid pro quo thing with the Chrissies. And I think we're seeing his disdain for the courts in everything. He and the Trump administration in general have had a lot of losses to the courts lately and throughout his second term. And in his first term as well. Pardons, I think, much like he's enjoying governing by executive orders, is a way for him to say no to the courts in a way that is completely and utterly unchallengeable, right? Congress, if they got their act together, could nix his executive orders, his national emergencies, his tariffs, everything. No one can touch his pardons. That is his and only his. And I think to some degree, if we're playing pop psychologist here, he enjoys the act of just forgiving people who he likes, because it is a power and it is a way for him to say to the liberal radical leftist courts, no, actually, your opinion doesn't matter. what you have, the cases that you have presented, none of that matters. What matters is I want to let them go free. So they're going to go free. And I think as relating to the policy of his administration, that brashness, that boldness, that disdain, right? We're seeing the administration on a collision course with the courts. It's one of the few actual guardrails left. And this is a way not to fully get around the guardrail, but it's a way to needle, right? To needle the courts a little bit. And I think that has a lot to do with what he's saying. And even stuff that's left field, like saying that he's going to pardon Diddy. There's no reason to do that except for the fact that it would make the news, which he probably likes. And that
he also spent a lot of time being like, we're friends.
Also, it might be that.
There's
yeah.
that.
Yeah. And it could be. Maybe they are friends.
I'm not saying they're close friends, but I think it might be in his best interest to be like, okay, get him out of there. Get him out of there. No, don't let him talk anymore.
Yeah. So, yeah, I hope this one has been kind of an interesting look at some of Trump's pardons and kind of how everything got started and where we are today. But much like his executive orders, those numbers just keep pumping up higher and higher. And it's definitely in everyone's best interest to keep an eye on this. Because, yeah, you never know when he's going to just let a famous rap star, go free, or anyone at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sets a precedent that if a bunch of people were to try another January 6th and he's still in power, they get a get out of jail free card. It's there. It's on the table.
Yeah, and the fact that something so serious, all of the punishments for that can be overturned is not something I think that anyone would have considered before this administration. But it is something that they're going to have to consider afterwards, in whatever state the United States is in after the Trump presidency. You've got a lot of kind of questions now about the rule of law, and do we maybe start looking at making some constitutional changes, please and thank you. Well, I think that's gonna about wrap it up for this one.
Yeah.
Hope you've enjoyed this episode. Catch our next weekly brief coming out this Friday. And for myself and Josh, we hope to see you next time.
I'm going to go watch a movie with a competent president, like The Rock.
This has been a Haunted Mouse production. Cut that out.